saw with the vine-covered drops. And it had a swimming pool, which was a plus. And I reflect on the idea that, you know, it just adds in a 40-degree summer something else. And these gates, which I bought very cheaply, thinking they'd be perfect with driveway, of course, far too narrow, had to be put there. But it ended up being the perfect place for them because that little stone wall that runs near the back of the house divides then the garden. And the garden has been turned into 3 different rooms. The top part there is in like a courtyard just outside the dining room, and that's a lovely rose growing everywhere. This goes into the pool garden. Beyond the pool garden, where the cypress are, is what's called the flower garden. And up the other end of the garden is the orchard. So these are all part of this fantasy, aren't they, really? The idea that you can have this place that has all these elements. The other thing I think that makes France particularly appealing and that I wanted to capture in the book, in these moments of segue or whatever, is the fact that as a country, and particularly the rural aspects of France, it has this kind of solidity. And when various researchers have interviewed English people who live there, a lot of them would say that they wanted to live in France because it felt like England 50 years ago. You know, that idea of community and solidity, things change. I mean, you could argue that everything in England had changed badly because there was not much to fill the place of old coal mining, just oil. People just weren't felt that they'd lost everything. Whereas in France, there is a lot of emphasis on social cultural interest. For example, in our village, if a house like ours goes on the market, we know it will appeal to someone who's looking to buy a dream. But there are a lot of old houses, there are very old people in the village. Now, when they die, nobody wants their house because they're just not romantic. Not for people like me, I suppose. But what the council does is buy it, and it does it up, and then it makes it available for a family on low income child, because that's a big village. And so there is this sort of thinking ahead about what people village alive and healthy. And one of those things is a village school where lots of little kids go and people come into the village. There are always these, that's a big thing here at the top, but the women there who look like they're about to storm Versailles and the pitchforks or I take a local group of singers and who like to enact some of the ancient Occitan, it's an part of Occitania. Lavender is everywhere, and of course after the Tour de France there are endless short bike rides all around France that people do. And this is a sort of summer stroll. This is what people do. These are not from our area, these are calissons from Aix-en-Provence, but our area has Canelé, which is on the first slide, little one-flavoured. But every region seems to have its own specialty inside. Now that makes a place very, very interesting and exciting and very, very regional. All of you, I'm sure, have been to Paris at some stage and seen those shops in Paris that specialise in the food of Provence or something in Provence or somewhere in Berlin and so on. So there is this strong national identity of region and food and those, and of course this area where we are is very much a wine growing area from Bordeaux and Cognac and Bergerac wines, so on. So it has the culture around food and wine, particularly wine. And when you're there during the new releases, it's not unusual. Usually around September, October, all the new vintages come into the supermarkets, and Leclerc, which is a big local one, puts all the wines out on the thousands. And you see men walking around, it's often, you know, most see them in the supermarkets, but they have the Hachette guide, which is they're walking around the pens, making a note of what's there. So this, again, a passionate commitment to local produce. The other thing I think, so I love, this is a local cafe in nearby town. These waiters were there 15 years ago when we bought the house. And I think that's the other thing you get in these regional areas, this sort of solidity of job and identity and just getting to know people. In France, being a waiter is not seen as just a part-time job for most people. A lot of it is a lifetime job. or there's a family commitment to the business. The Colon is a really popular cafe. They make food and so on. They wear that lovely Degas-like uniform, you know, with the dark vests and so on. But we know them all, and we know them because they've been there right from day one. And they probably know us, or at least they feel us familiar. And, you know, good idea. Everything about the food and the ways in which we eat and so on is, you know, managed by law and expectation, size and name and quantity and so on. And there's expectation in every village in France that people, one way or another, be able to get a baguette 7 days a week. So how does a book do this? And for me, obviously, the main thing as the book speaks is about place and how I capture that place, but also how you do it without sounding either, gee whiz, this is really great for me, or how you do it without sounding like you're just having fun with the locals. And I was very, very careful around how I talked about people that I was close to. I mean, I mentioned Jean-Marie, our garage, I'm called mechanic. One of the things that lovely real estate agent did once we bought the house, it'd only been on the market for 3 days when it sold, which is really rare. In fact, most houses can take up to a year or two to sell. But she sold it so fast, I think she felt she had to do something more for her money. And so when the men we bought it from went back to England, they were artists, and they had a very artistic approach to the house. But she just kept an eye for us. The letterbox fell down, she couldn't got a new one. She went and got the car. We bought a car online, a Lexus, 1985 Lexus. She went and got it, and not far away in another village, and delivered it to the barn and had it there. She went to the house if I had when I had a lounge delivered, and she organised the telephone and the electricity, gas changeover and stuff. So she did all these really practical things. And I think that's what made it so easy and so special for us. We got someone like that. I mean, how do you write about someone like that other than with respect and gratitude, Frank? And with Jean-Marie, when we couldn't get the car out of the garden, and we had to call the equivalent of the AA. And Jean-Marie, who is honestly an archetypical looking Frenchman with moustache and bearer and stuff, and he came to the house and got it out. And we did shopping, came back and put it back in the barn. Of course, next day we couldn't get it out again. So we had to call him again. And at this point, it was like, you know, and he finally got it out, and he gunned it out of the driveway, and pebbles, smoke, and all the rest. And it was very funny. And he just said in English, but he said, you know, better leave the car, and just idiots, you know. Writing about him, I was fairly gentle. I would not have written. I heard lots of village gossip, as you do, over the years. And I think, you know, we talked this morning about character and ethics. And I think it is important that you make a decision about how you want to go. People. There were things I know, and there are things I know about people in the village. It's none of my business, and their stories that don't belong to me. What belongs to me is my experiences, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to repeat anything from history. And in France, still, people remember who was on the side of the Vichygov, who was on the side of the good guys. And there are still people in families in the area who talk about someone was a collaborator, or their family were collaborators. And I don't particularly want to go there. And there's some really interesting stories I could have included, but chose not to, because in lots of ways, to be in this position is to be incredibly privileged. But for a start, being a white middle class person who can buy a house in another country and just spend some of the year living there is a very, very privileged place to be. When, you know, there are so many people in the world desperate to find refuge somewhere. So that's obviously a matter for concern. But also, you know, the village is only 650 people, and that's all the village. That includes farms all around. And of that, I think we represent only 10%, and that includes Irish, English, Australian, Danish, Dutch, Belgian, and so on. So you are a minority and a privileged minority in a place where the Dordogne had the lowest income in France for a while. It was quite a poor region. It's still largely rural, despite its popularity. But these are just some of the things I wanted to touch on. That idea of how you do gather when you're writing about it. All of the good things without it being too Peter Mailish, because there was a lot of criticism of the area and about the way the locals became kind of, sweetie pie kind of funny characters, and people resented it. It's I enjoyed reading it, and it certainly sparked a lot of interest in Provence. But I do think you have to be a bit careful about stereotyping, as we also talked about this morning, and the way in which you capture your own life, because your own life there is not really a French life. Even if I live there for the next 50 years, something, I would always be Australian. There's always the Turk, is it the Turk? There's the Australian, there's the Dutch. That's how people know. I have walked past when the meat man used to come to the village butcher. A meat van used to come, and someone told the bloke who sells meat from the van that I'm Australian, and he yelled out, "Kangaroo!" And all I could say was, "But," all this sort of stuff. So you have this kind of identity, and it's best to acknowledge and embrace it. And they even talk about the Parisians, and I have friends who used to live in Paris who now they're permanently there, but they're French, but they're Paris. A slight behind it. So that sort of thing exists. There's also, how far you go around politics. France, like here, and England is far right. Certainly has support from far right, Le Pen and so on, make ground. And our area, that whole area of the Dordogne and Aquitaine, any parts of Aquitaine used to be quite socialist. They're moving more to the right. There are some elements here very strong. Our village is just touching it, not too dramatic. But, you watch it with interest and to a degree concern, because, there is talk about how you get rid of foreigners, and that sort of aspect of things can be a little bit problematic. This picture is one of the great highlights of summer in France, is all of the villages do fêtes, village fêtes. And this is a meal fruit night, which is mussels and chips, which are really common and popular. So you go along and you pay 10 euros or 15 euros, and you get melon and ham and mussels with chips, and then usually a dessert of some kind, and you can go and buy some wine or beer. And so you sit out under the stars with all your neighbours, the French, whoever else, and lots of people from nearby villages. And of course, there's a band, and everyone dances. A lot of local French people would be really fond of line dancing, so I'm not sure where that came from. But that's exactly where this sort of experience comes. So I'm hoping the book is a sort of love story to place, as I said, seasonal. It begins when we went there for the holiday. We went back in the winter, the first visit back after having bought it, and it was freezing cold, and we got off the plane and then went downstairs at Charles de Gaulle for the Bordeaux train. And all the way south, I kept looking out the window at all this snow that was everywhere, and it looked like a scene from the film The Train, Burt Lancaster and Jean Moreau, about the Nazis stealing art from the Jeu de Paume and taking it to Germany. And everywhere I went, I just kept being linked into sort of wintry films. I went back in spring by myself, and a girlfriend who was in Europe came and visited, and we did certain things, endlessly buying stuff for the house and taking stuff from here for the house. Then summer and autumn. And autumn is particularly lovely, as I say, the nut trees, the harvesting and so on. All those beautiful yellow sunflowers eventually go very brown and get munched, into seeds. So, and it is that real feeling of being in a place, watching the cranes fly south in a big V, everybody noting on the social media, the cranes are flying south, and the weather's been cold enough for them to go. And then someone put something up in March, April, the cranes are coming back and hear the honking as they make their way north. And that's such a magical experience. So look, to capture that magic is, important. So when I was talking about Leeds and String earlier, that moment of watching the cranes or sitting by the pool and listening to the owls, all of these are like little beads you capture. They're intense and emotional moments of place. And I think it's important rather than writing a memoir to see it as big long narrative, to see it as a series of nostalgic and other reflections on your place, where you are, but also what led you there. And I think that the big thing that's interesting about reading narrative memoir like this, which has lots in it about theory and ideas, and films and books and so on,